Hi everyone, welcome to another video. James with you here. This is a contest entry actually for a channel which is quite new to me. Danny, his channel is called Not Enough Records. Fantastic new channel. This is his 100 subscribers competition, although he's gone past 100 subs now. Really interesting channel there. Check him out. He is a very thoughtful guy, shows a lot of really interesting music. You know, offers some really valuable perspectives on things he likes and enjoys, and just been really enjoying checking out his video. And the contest that he's got is a really intriguing one, and it's just to do with liner notes on records, and you know, no big concept other than that really, just to show some liner notes, read some liner notes from records that you might have in your collection, talk about them a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do, not going to waste any time. So the first record I want to quickly talk to you about is this one. This is Erik Satie, piano music, just a compilation. Erik Satie, you know, French composer from the minimalist school, and what I love about these liner notes here, which are written by Frank Granville Barker. These people on classical records always have very grand sounding names. It just paints a very succinct little portrait of Satie. You know, because Satie was quite a cool sort of composer really. You know, he influenced a lot of you know, modernist composers and actually people from the kind of pop and rock field as well. But you know, he led a very kind of quiet life in the suburbs of Paris, and you know, led a very unassuming life, and that's just captured brilliantly in these liner notes. It talks a little bit about his life, and then it just says in 1898, at the age of 32, he moved out of Montmartre to the distant suburb of Arcueil, where he passed the remaining 27 years of his life in a room to which he never once invited any of his friends, his only caller being the postman. I just love that bit of detail. Although he lived in dire poverty, his appearance became ever more dapper, complete with pince nez, bowler hat and umbrella. He economised by washing with pumice stone, explaining that it goes further than soap, and ate well only when his wealthier friends invited him to their homes. He remained so shy that on one such visit he dashed out of the house to a convenient tree in the garden rather than ask his hostess the way to the bathroom. I just love that kind of mundane level of detail, but just in a few short details it just speaks volumes about what kind of guy he was, you know. And his music is so kind of beautiful and fastidious, but it's full of kind of peace and this kind of aura of spiritual calm, but you'd never know from listening to it what kind of man he was. So that's just a great example of how liner notes can really fill you in on some you know, really important biographical detail. Okay, so this next one, Danny had talked on one of his videos about the Yazoo label, and I said to him, I'm sure I have at least one Yazoo record somewhere, and I couldn't remember where it was or what it was. It turns out to be this one, Blind Willie McTell, the great, was he from Georgia? Great 12-string blind blues guitarist. And let me quickly show you the record, because it was the Yazoo label that we were talking about. Let's have a look. Here we go. Yazoo. I forget now which the record was that that Danny was showing on his video. Anyway, yeah, really amazing guitar player, and you know, blues guitar playing is such a kind of interesting, profound area of, you know, whatever expertise, musicality. It's not something I, you know, really begin to understand. And you know, often on these kind of early blues records, the level of musical knowledge and technical knowledge that the liner notes offer is really quite something. I mean, this guy here, who are these liner notes by? I can't see. He describes William McTell's picking style. He says it invites comparison to his fellow Georgians Pegleg Howl and Barbecue Bob only in its eccentricity and the jagged rhythms it produces. Even in playing the ragtime standards that normally feature alternating bass techniques, McTell uses unique scattershot picking patterns. The interplay between his thumb and picking fingers is so free as to suggest the possibility that he did not anchor his pinky to the guitar. You have to read that a few times, even to kind of, you know, picture what it is he's actually describing there. The most remarkable feature of his music is his inconsistent picking approach, which has almost no order and seems to stem as much from within as from his whim as from his vocal inflections. He treats each phrase of his music as a separate entity with its own rhythmical and melodic nuances. To play in such a fashion requires a degree of control that very few bluesmen ever acquired. As McTell's musical stream of consciousness wanders, so do his bar structures. He may follow a verse of 10 bars with another of 14. I just find that kind of thing totally gripping. When somebody has kind of analysed the music, you know, really, really carefully, and then is able to write about it. There's the famous quote, isn't there, that you can't write about music any more than you can dance about architecture. I think Thelonious Monk was credited with that, you know, with having said that, but I suspect the quote goes back, you know, further into history. But you know, there were some great jazz critics and blues critics from back in the day who were really, really kind of able to write about the music. Paul Oliver was a great example of that, you know. Okay, so there's two examples. Moving swiftly on, I quite like it when the liner notes of a particular record somehow capture the spirit or the feel of the record. This is Roxy Music's debut album, you know, very strange, kind of clashing art rock, art pop, quite avant-garde. Here we have the inner, and you can see them all looking like strange alien creatures, you know. They were such a weird original band. And these liner notes by somebody called Simon Puxley, they just seem to totally integrate, you know, with the spirit and the feel of the music. I suspect what happened with this was that he was invited to watch a recording session, and you know, what he's doing is basically describing what he saw. Is this a recording session or a cocktail party? On the rocks, please. Where's the icebox? Musicians lie rigid and fluid in a mannerist canvas of hard-edged black leather glintings, red satin slashes, smoky surrounding gloom. Listening to the music resounding, cutting the air like it was glass, rock and roll juggernauted into demonic, electronic, supersonic, momo momentum, wailing old-time sax, velvet viscous, vibrato vicious or ensemble jamming and more, synthesized to whirls and walls of hard rock sound, mixed, fixed, sifted, lifted to driving high-flying chunks and vortices of pure electronic wow, gyrating, parabolic, tantalizing, fantasizing, phantomizing. Echoes of magic golden moments become real presences, dream world and real world loaded with images, etc., etc. You know, it's kind of, it's deeply pretentious sounding, and it's got a very kind of hyperbolic feel to it, but that absolutely fits with the music. You know, Roxy Music did come across as a kind of, I would say deeply pretentious, but they sort of deliberately put on airs and graces, and they did things in the most outrageous way possible, very flamboyant, you know. And on one level, you could say those liner notes are quite annoying, but I think they're deliberately meant to be, you know, provocative and of a piece with the music. And another great example actually is the album Gree by Dr. John, which is a very kind of hoodoo voodoo kind of black magic-y, kind of like a kind of New Orleans spooky psych album. And I don't know who wrote these words, but it absolutely nails the kind of aura of creeping menace and the kind of black magic that you get on this record. I will mash my special fait de on all you who buy my charts, the rights of Coco Robichaud, who, invisible to all but me, will act as a second guardian angel until you overwork him. All who attend our rites will receive kites from the second tier of Tit Alberto, who brought the Sorte Chapeau, to sheer Vabrula up to us from the Antilles to the Bayou. What he's doing on this is he's just basically thanking the people who played on the record and giving them a credit, but it's all just done in this totally kind of mad, opaque New Orleans patois. My group consists of Dr. Poupardou of Destined Tambourine and Dr. Ditmus of Conga, Dr. Bourdreau of Funky Knuckleskins and Dr. Baptiste of Scorpio in Bass Clef, etc., etc. Under the 8 visions of Professor Longhair re-encanted the charts of now. Again, it's sort of pretentious, but I think it's done kind of, tongue-in-cheek really, a bit like the Roxy music. I just love it. And the final example I've got is a total contrast, but it's an example of where the liner notes somehow absolutely nail and encapsulate what that record is all about. This is the first Wings album, Paul McCartney and Wings, the album Wildlife, which was absolutely panned when it came out at the time. And the sleeve notes here are written by somebody called Clint Harrigan, who it actually turned out in the end was actually Paul McCartney himself. And in a very concise way, the liner notes just describe how the album came to be recorded. When Paul and Linda McCartney were in New York recording Ram, they needed a drummer, so they found a sweaty old basement in the West 40s and invited some drummers to play on a battered old drum kit. One of those who turned up and went straight for his tom-toms was Denny Sewell, a tall type with 8 generations of drummers in his family, who played well and left the drum kit throbbing. After that, Paul, Linda and Denny played together on Ram, and then each took off on a holiday. The Macs returned to Britain, and during the time following wrote a bunch of songs at their country retreat. And when the time came to go recording again, they rang Denny Lane, a Birmingham lad, and asked him if he was coming out to play. Replying in the affirmative, he brought his faithful guitar, and he and the Macs, along with Denny S., who had arrived from the States as if by magic carrying his wife, who was drunk again, and his drums, proceeded. They rehearsed for a while, sang some old songs, wrote some new ones, and in time they headed for the big city studios. In 3 days they had laid down most of the tracks, and by the end of a couple of weeks the album was finished. In this wrapper is the music they made. Can you dig it? There's just something so kind of perfectly rendered in that description, because the whole point of, when Paul formed Wings, it was meant to be this very kind of ragbag improvised thing where no time was spent recording this album at all. It was recorded really quickly in a matter of days. I think it was all first takes, and it's just great the way that the way the story is told there. It just perfectly captures that spirit. They rang Denny, a Birmingham lad, asked him if he was coming out to play. Again, like all the other records, there's something about the spirit of the liner notes which is in complete and total keeping with the music. And again, a bit like the Erik Satie one, it just gives you a really valuable snapshot of biography, and just gives you a little window into what was happening at the time. Liner notes can be used for all kinds of different reasons. They can offer technical guides to the music, as with the William McTell album, or they can do something very pretentious and opaque, like the Roxy music or whatever. But it's always worth reading them, because it kind of always adds to the experience in some way, even if it just makes you kind of cross or impatient. There's something very very kind of useful and helpful about liner notes often, and that's why I thought this was just a really good idea for a competition, and it's one which I enjoy, you know, going through the records and seeing what I had. So thanks, Danny, much appreciated, and good luck with the contest and with the channel. And if you haven't checked out Danny's channel, then do so. I'll leave a link up there and down there so you can check Danny out ASAP. Okay, VC, take care, see you soon, bye bye.